Okay, hi everyone. My name is Patrick Alexander. I'm really excited today to be here among you and be able to present and give you some insights about solutions that we have, and we can basically utilize it in the big data world. So with that, let me start my presentation. Uh, a little bit about me and what I do. So I'm in Microsoft as a data solution architect. I'm concentrating on the data and AI part, and I have over 25 years of experience in the data world. I've worked as data developer, DBA, business intelligence and data warehouse architect in the past, mostly with the startups. I worked with before joining Microsoft, I worked with the three startups, basically 4 or 5 years each one, and then I joined Microsoft. And then I like basically working with the data, understand the data, and help customers to achieve more from their data. I have almost all kind of certificates from Microsoft regarding the data platform. I'm a Microsoft certified trainer also, so we deliver certificates and classes and trainings for the customers or anyone who is interested. I've been active with the SoCal community, Southern California community for a long time. I've been doing, we have something called Global Azure Days, which it's been going on for a few years now. This year, unfortunately, we couldn't do that. But before that, I'm active on that community also and providing sessions and trainings or whatever is needed. So for today, what I will do, I will cover, some of the concepts of the data warehousing and what the data warehousing means in the cloud. And then I will try to describe the Azure capabilities on the data warehousing section in the cloud, which will basically be Azure Synapse. If the time permits, I will do some demos hands-on so you can see that what these topics and what the tools and services can deliver real-time in the cloud. So with that, I'm starting to go over the data warehousing case. So why data warehouse? Why we need more understanding from our data in the cloud? Analytics and data is the #1 investment for a lot of businesses, right? A lot of big companies, a lot of small companies, when they're trying to understand how their data works, what they do deliver with the data, and what they can do with the collected data from their customers, from their behaviors, from applications, and so forth. But unfortunately, what we see is that 80%, of these leaders, they report that they're struggling with understanding the data or becoming mature users of the data, right? And 55%, they reporting that the data it's still in the silos and not being able to share the extractions, collections, and understanding and analytics of the data within the organization. So each different pieces of organization, they're using the data on their own. Now, with that says, back 20 years ago, everybody was trying just to build the data, understand the data, and then it moves to the next phase, which was collecting data and utilizing more and more, which brought the big data wave, right? With the big data, we come up with the different type of the data, not only the relational data that you see on this screen on the right side, which was proven with the security, privacy, it was dependable performance with already mature platforms for the relational data, and it was more or less operational data. It was, what you need to collect. You had your structured collection models, and you were collecting and processing based on those. But with the big data comes to the picture, now you have a data lake. That on the data lake, you basically collect everything. You collect your fast data, you collect your very large data, all the 3Vs that we talk, right? So all with bringing all these things together, the question was, which one should I use? Should I always rely on my big data, or I should rely on my relational data? Should I use data lake, or I should data warehouse? So that that kind of thought basically merged together at some point, that you cannot use either one of this. You have to use both of those. And then when you think about using both of those solutions, basically you need a platform to be able to provide you that you can mix and match those data to the best and be able to extract your results, you can extract your analytics. So Microsoft has this solution called Azure Synapse Analytics. which we are basically going to discuss it today if the time permits. So what is an Azure Synapse? What is Azure Synapse does? Azure Synapse basically it's a limitless analytics service with unmatched time to insights. That means that you can deliver, you can extract your information that you're trying to understand from your data behavior. And that's not only limiting you to relational data, but also it will give you the power to be able to extract the data from your unstructured data, right? So that's why the Azure Synapse Analytics it's basically it's an Azure SQL data warehouse, but to the power of 10, power of 50. Okay, so it's extremely powerful, and that's how we take a look on the Azure Synapse Analytics. So what Azure Synapse basically we want to say it has four major pillars, right? So basically, it's a limitless scale. You can scale it out to the point that you need, and you can scale it back down to the point that you just need for utilization. So that power it's under your control. You can scale it out, you can scale it down the way that you want. It can provide you very powerful insights. It has user experience, which is basically extremely user friendly. And it's very cool for people who use previous languages. We will go through that in my demo and the presentation, and you will realize what I'm trying to say. And definitely, the last but not the least, the most important thing that we always put on the front is the security. Microsoft is committed to provide the best security in the land for everyone. We're spending, billions of dollars every year to make sure that the security is on top of the list that we always have, and that's one of the pillars that we have. Now, when we talk about the limitless scale provider, it means that you can basically scale out your compute nodes. You can basically have unlimited data capacity in your fingertips. It's very extremely easy for the platform to scale up or scale it down. We will see that how that works. Regarding the pricing, definitely this is something that we didn't create. This is a research that comes out, and you have access to the reference that I have on the screen. That Azure Synapse not only is 14 times faster, but is also 94% more cost effective compared to other competitors that we have in the market. So that's also one of the highlights that we want to make sure that customers are aware and how they can utilize that power. Regarding the powerful insights, we provide integrated business intelligence and machine learning, which is tied to the Synapse. You don't need to take out your data. You don't need to use another tools to be able to see your insights. Power BI is internally integrated with the Synapse. You can build and realize your presentations, your presentation layer of your data right from the Synapse. And also ML is also highly integrated with the Synapse because of the capabilities of the analytical languages within the Synapse. So about the analytics, it's basically we try to provide a consistent version of data for everyone. That's the big concept. That's the big promise of the data lake, right? That having a data lake underneath of your compute layers of your analytics is the promise to be able to provide a consistent version of data for everyone who is trying to use the data, everyone who is trying to consume the data. Azure Synapse is sitting on top of the data lake that will provide you and will enable you to do that very seamlessly and very easily. And then again, the security, I want to emphasize one more time that we protect the sensitive data in real time. Monitoring and responding of the threats is also monitored real time through the Azure monitoring centers, security centers, and so forth. So this one is provided at no cost to no one, and this is something that Microsoft committed, and we are doing for everyone at no cost. Now, what I'm going to do from this point, I'm going to try to extract and go deep into the Azure Synapse and give you the perspective on each piece of the Azure Synapse and try to explain how different pieces works on the Azure Synapse. Azure Synapse Analytics, as you can see here, it's an ecosystem. It's sitting on the center of your data world. You can use the Power BI. You can use any other presentation and demonstration tools on top of the Azure Synapse Analytics, connecting natively through the Azure connections or through the other connections that you prefer to use. You can easily utilize Azure Machine Learning because it's natively integrated, or you can, again, since it's using the data lake underneath, you can easily connect it to your preferred ML tools and extract the data. So basically, Azure Synapse, it's becoming again a platform, becomes an ecosystem for everyone who's trying to use. So this picture, it's a very high-level picture that demonstrates what the data, a modern data warehouse architecture in Azure looks like, right? On the left side, we have our logs, files, and media, unstructured files, basically. And also on the bottom, you can see that you have your business data, which is most of the time it's very constructed, it's very formalized and very model data driven. No matter what, we have tools, Azure Data Factory for integration. You can bring your data through the Azure Data Factory directly to data lake storage. Now, having data lake storage will enable you to basically share the data constantly through all the users that you want. And then through different tool sets that we have, either it's an Azure Databricks or Azure Synapse Analytics, you can communicate and you can connect to your data lake storage. And you can do your analytics, you can do your MPP models, mass parallel processing, batch processing with the power of the Synapse that gives you the access to be able to provide your data to your analytics layer. So this is the big picture, but what is underneath and of the Azure Synapse Analytics? So the box that you see, it's the ecosystem of the Azure Synapse Analytics. And it basically, it's a platform that we have. And that platform sits on top of the data lake storage that I noticed a few times. So the data lake storage is an integrated as a common data layer for the entire Synapse Analytics environment. Now, on top of that, we have different layers. The data integration layer, it's something that integrates your platform services for managing security, monitoring, and metadata. So that's sitting on the core of the analytics, and it enables you to be able to monitor or provide you the security tiers, provide you the management of your data and meta store. On top of the data integration, we have our runtimes. Runtimes are basically the compute power of what you're trying to utilize, how you're going to run. For the data lake analytics, we have two compute engines, and the most popular ones, right? The one is the SQL compute runtime, and the other one is the Spark runtime. So no matter what language you use, basically by providing you with these two compute powers, you will be able to use different type of languages to execute. Now, when we're talking about the compute, we want to say that you have different forms that you can use this compute, okay? So you can use provisioned ones, which is basically serverless approach to the compute. Azure gives you the compute powers. We will see this during the demo, that by built-in, you already have a SQL provisioned on-demand compute power. But if you prefer to build something for yourself, which has complicated cluster, very high power clusters, and you want to have multiple compute tiers, multiple cluster tiers for computing your processes, you can provision them yourself. So two different ways to basically approach for SQL and Spark processes inside your clusters. And then on top of those, what you will get different language execution processes. SQL being more popular, Python, .NET, Java, Scala, R, all of them you can use Spark nodes for executing those codes. So combining all this stuff into one place, we call that Azure Synapse Analytics Studio. That no matter what you're trying to do, you can come to one centralized place and you can execute everything through one unified studio. So that's the unified experience that we have. And then on top of those things, you can execute your machine learning, you can do your business intelligence and so forth, because now everything is in one place and we can integrate everything all together. So this is how the Azure Synapse Analytics works in details, right? components only. Now, I'm going to bring the Azure Studio, which is this piece on the top that you see, I highlighted on the red, and give you some insight what the Azure Synapse Studio looks like. When you go to the studio, you see this screen, which basically gives you, starting from the left side, it gives you the overview, access to your data, access to the development pieces, orchestration, which is our ETL or data factory piece that I showed you, monitoring piece and the security piece, and managing your data sources and or managing the entire Azure Synapse Studios. And on the on the front, you see that we have our, if you want to do an ingest, explore, analysis, or visualization piece, you can easily do that. If you come down here, we also have a few templates that if you choose to use the templates as a fast adoption way and fast way to learn and get your feet into the Synapse, you can use those templates and you can start using those templates. Now, what is the Synapse Data Hub? So this is the Data Hub, and what does it do? Now, if you want to basically create a new script, if you try to create a new notebook experience, if you try to do a new data flow process, you will basically come to this tab, and through the Data Hub, you can build any of these processes that you need to do. On the data section, we have a very rich experience. You can basically build your data sets, databases, your access to data on the blob storage. We will see this on the demo, that how you can easily connect your data, your blob data, your large data from a blob storage and or anything similar to S3, and you can utilize the data and access the data for query processes. And if you choose to do a preview for your data, you don't need to do anything else. You have those on your top of your fingers. You can preview your data to make sure that data, what does it look like, a very high level of analysis of data, properties of the data, what data is, the security, tiers of the data, and so forth. So that comes on the Data Hub section. On the Develop section, that you have multiple ways of developing different type of processes. The first one being SQL scripts. You can write SQL scripts. Then you can have a very rich notebook experience, extremely popular with data science people or people who are trying to do data exploration in the notebook experiences. With the notebook, you have access to multiple languages. You can write Python, you can write Scala, you can write even SQL or R codes within the same notebook, and then the runtime will be able to understand and execute those for you. So if you choose to basically do a SQL script, you can have your SQL compiler open up, connected to SQL on-demand runtime, what I was mentioning before, and then write your queries, and you have the experience for right front experience. It gives you the help right on the screen. You can build your commands easily, and then you can move it on. If you choose to export your data that you have, you don't need to do anything extra, right? Just by exporting tab, you can export to different formats, CSV, Excel, JSON, XML, right from the screen, or anything else that is needed. You have access to a graphical tool right on the screen. If you want to realize the different chart types, you can extract your data, different options, line chart, histogram chart, pie chart, and everything else is available from here. This is very useful when you are trying to do some kind of data engineering work. You want to see any anomaly on your data and so forth. So everything can be done from right here. Now, for the language choose, you can choose what languages you're trying to do for your notebook. As I mentioned, those are the runtimes that are currently available. If you choose to do Power BI, for example, if you want to do exports to the Power BI and realize your data in the Power BI, this is the way that you do. You go and you create your data visualization right from the Synapse Studio. And then from that point, you can make sure that the data is there, and then you can export it directly to, save and export directly to the Power BI environment, which is basically will enable your end users to access to the data real time from only the visualization tiers that they want. So everything is totally integrated hand in hand and pretty easy to get your data to the end users in very short time, very effective, and very in a secure manner. Now, next piece is the orchestration hub. Orchestration hub is basically the ETL or ELT, any way that you want to look at it, to the data, right? If you're extracting, loading, and transforming the data, that's something that's available. If you want to do extract, transform, and then load, that's also available within the Synapse Studio. This is the piece that it's integrated with the Azure Data Factory, the native tool for Azure to do the extraction, transformation, and load type of work. Everything is available within the Synapse Studio that you can go. The monitoring hub, it's also available through the Synapse that you can see and monitor the jobs that have been executed. In the demo, we will see that how this works in the real life, how you can see this experience, and then how you can do the orchestration. What the orchestration means? Orchestration means that you have one data copy process, then you have one kind of transformation process, and then you have one kind of loading process. You can orchestrate all these processes from the data factory and from your orchestration hub, that you can tie this process together. They can be triggered based on some events. They can be triggered based on specific schedule and so forth. But everything is visible completely under your own control to use it. Now, data integration piece that we saw in this slide, which is this piece, is contained multiple pieces, right? It's a trigger base, it's a pipeline approach, the way that, okay, you have different type of pipelines. Within the pipelines, you have different activities. Each activity is responsible for doing some piece of the big picture that you're trying to implement within your process. The example is that you want to load some data from some sources, then you want to do some kind of transformation on your data, and after your transformation is complete, you want to extract the data and load it for your end users on your data lake. So this process is a total orchestration piece that we have, and we can implement everything through the Azure Synapse Studio. So the data movement, if you are interested to know, it's a per job. You have elasticity availabilities. It's up to 4 gig per second. That's the performance that you reach. It's a very simple process. You can do any other tools if you are very comfortable with visual tools. You can do that as you saw in the tools. Or if you want to write the code, you can write the code and you can deploy your code through that one. So the connectors. This is pretty interesting. Currently we have, I think, 90 plus connectors, but this list is growing every day. I doubt that you cannot find the data sources that you're trying to work, and it's not in this list. And if it's not in the list, definitely you can use the ODBC connectors of your own data sets, and you can connect them through the ODBC connectors. So basically, it will enable you to connect and communicate with any type of the data, any type of sources that you are communicating, and your your requirements are. Pipelining is the process that we have, and then within the pipelines, you can build different processes that you can connect from different sources and then bring your data or process the data. So that's the concept of the Azure Data Factory. So Azure Analytics, what is the SQL Analytics part? The SQL Analytics part is this piece highlighted in red. What will enable you is to enable for example, if you need to add storage, right, and you're not sure that what kind of storage you want to do, you have access to all these different type of storages, column store indexes, table partitioning, isolation modes, materials view, non-cluster indexes, and so forth. Everything that you saw on the native SQL world, it's available in the Azure Synapse world also. It's provides you T-SQL querying. A lot of people are familiar with the T-SQL, so the transition for them from SQL servers to SQL Synapse is extremely easy. It's almost seamless, and they can get on their coding and writing codes in extremely short time. And then we have our entire SQL object models, right? Tables, views, so procedure, functions. Everything is available on the Synapse environment. So on the SQL on-demand side, if you prefer to do a serverless approach, right? That you don't want to manage any cluster, you don't want to manage any server or any hardware for that. Azure will provide you that SQL on-demand runtime. You will be charged based on the queries that you're executing and nothing more. So that becomes extremely powerful for users who they just want to write the code, execute the code, and not deal with the computing layers. That also will enable the users to do that. Now, for the on-demand querying and storage, right? So if you, for example, what you see on the screen is that I have a data set. Data set is a big data. It's a Parquet file sitting on a folder, on unstructured data. And I want to be able to write a query. So with just, right clicking and then saying, okay, generate me the script, now basically the Synapse is generating the query for you, and then by executing the query, you have access to your open raw data sets very easily, and you don't need to know a lot of backend processes that why and how I need to build these things. The tool is basically will do it for you, and then when you're ready to execute, you can attach your SQL on-demand compute cluster, and then you can execute your query. So that's basically very easy to do. Now, one more time for the Spark clusters. Okay, what the Spark clusters do? Okay, the Synapse Job Service basically will enable the process for Sparks and execution of your Scala codes. Okay, so for Synapse Spark instance, when you're trying to build, you have multiple options, right? You can create only a VM that has very small capacity. You can have a VM that it runs high capacity, and Synapse Studio will be responsible for managing and then basically capitalizing all these events that you're doing. So no matter you choose SQL or you choose a Spark, you have the power to execute the queries the way that you prefer to do. I want to talk about the security a little bit more, and what we take. What is the approach of the security in general, and specific to the Azure Synapse. When we think about the security, it's a multi-layer protection. And when we're talking about the multi-layer, we want to think about, like an onion, that the most important thing is the data. It's always sitting on the core of the onion. And then for accessing to that, you have to be able to peel multiple layers of and you have to be able to pass from the multiple layers, right? The most outside piece is the threat protection. And then on top of that, we have the network security, we have our authentication layer, we have our access control, and then we have our data protection. If anybody be able to pass through any of these things, then they will be able to access the data and then see the data, what does it do. So every single piece of this, every single layer of this protection, it's managed separately, and that adds to the protection layer that Synapse brings to the picture. Now, this is a single sign-on process that, how does it do? A user on the left will request a login. We will process if you have a cookie, if you have an active session or no. If you don't have, we will pass your credentials to Azure Active Directory for verification and authentication. If that authentication is passed and you have a valid token, you will get back your token, and then your token, from that point, you will continue working with your token for the rest of your processes with the that service, which is a web Azure Synapse service. And then from that point, if you need to do any kind of orchestration with the data factory, or you need to do any type of communication with the Power BI or Spark clusters, SQL clusters, and so forth, we will utilize that token to access different services. So this is a very important, because understanding how the security works on top, I think it's the core of every organization, every single system that is going to implement a solution. And every single time that we're talking to a customer, this security discussion comes up as high important topic. Without passing the security, definitely there is no way that we can start working on a project and so forth. So knowing these things helps us, helps the customer, gives the visibility to the customer to realize that how the data is protected, and we provide basically all the provisionings for the data security. Now, regarding the compliance, Azure and specifically Synapse is compliant with all these compliances that you see, with the ISOs, with the HIPAA, with the different federal requirements and government requirements, either in the United States or out of the United States. So it's compliant with all the compliances, and it brings a lot of certainty to for the users to use Azure Synapse. If you want to see a few of the customers, there's a slide. This list is just keep going, but I just choose this one to give you and highlight that what the customer looks like today. So that will be end of my presentation. I think, let me ask our panel if I have time to go through the demo for another 5 minutes or no.
You still have time.
Okay, let me open up my demo environment, and we together go through some demos that I have. So for those of who logged into the Azure before, you know that what this is, but I will start to give you a highlight. This is the Azure environment that we have, right? On the Azure environment, you will see different resources on the left side, and you have your dashboard in the front side. And then we have this concept, of the resource groups. Resource groups are basically let me ask, are you still able to see my screen?
Yeah, we can see your screen.
Thank you. So the resource groups are basically the core of the place where you go and you build your services and you build your resources for executing. For this demo, for example, I choose to create a resource group. I called it COVID tracking. The demo that I have, it's related to COVID data, very hot topic these days, I guess. Everyone knows what the data looks like. So I have multiple services starting from the top, Data Factory for ETL, DLT type of processes. I have my Synapse workspace. I have my storages, and I have my Spark pool. This is the pool that I'm going to use for processing. Now, if I go to my Synapse workspace, this is the one that we were talking, and you saw it on the presentation here, right? So we have our front page. You have a lot of access to a lot of tutorials if you want to learn how to work with the Synapse and so forth. So you can come down here for authoring processes, for building new pipelines. This is where we go. Okay, and this is where my demo starts from, basically. On the manage side, we have access to the different connections. The connections being my storage, my GitHub, and different types, right? If I want to basically create a new one, and this is the way that I was telling you about the different connectors. So you can see that there is hundreds, I think more than 100 these days. I have 90 on my screen, but you can see that there is more than that right now. Either if these are the Azure native ones, or if you want to do, from different NoSQL types, different real-time services as far as Dynamics goes, or Salesforce, or REST APIs, anything that you choose to access the data, you can access it from here. So let me cancel this one. So for this demo, what I choose to have access to a GitHub, because the data for the COVID is publicly available. And you will see that what the data looks like, and I'm accessing that data to bring the data to my environment. So let me go to my pipelines that you see. And this is the pipelining that I was showing you, right? This is the orchestration piece for the data. The orchestration on here is containing like 5 different processes. Copy data, which is basically bringing the data from this GitHub source that I showed you. And this one will give me a JSON string, which contains the entire data of the collected state data starting from January 16. when the different states, different places start collecting the data. So we have access to data from here. I have another copy data that I copy my raw data. Let me explain a little bit more in depth what this copy process does. So for the copy, I'm defining, I have a source. And for source, I'm defining where is my data source. My data source is my GitHub in this case. So if I want to open it up, you will see that, for example, my data source is my Git content, right? So that said, I can do my sync process. The sync is the target. Where am I targeting? My target in this case, these are CSV files. So I'm basically reading from an online Git repo, and then I'm copying my data into my data set. What does the data set looks like? I'm going to show you my storage, right? So you saw that with here, I had a storage, and this storage was containing a container, and the container had different folders, right? And this is where the data is going. So I'm copying my data from that Git into this COVID tracking, and then you can see that for the month 10, I'm basically running an automated process every day, and I'm collecting data every day. And the data here, it's nothing but a simple, CSV file. So that's the piece of the orchestration that this piece does. Now, the other piece is a data flow process. Data flow is basically the transformation piece. Now, what this data flow looks like, right? So this data flow, it's basically is responsible for doing a little bit more complicated type of work that not only the data copy can do. So this data flow reads from the source file that has been copied. It does some kind of extraction on specific fields that I want. It identifies some columns, and then the goal is to be able to extract specific columns, and not only that I'm doing it. I'm basically modifying my data types from my CSV to, like, let's say Parquet files, or log files, or any other different forms of the data. So if I go here, if I go to my probably curated data, you will see that now my curated data for every single day, I'm extracting and I'm creating data in different formats. So all this stuff can be done through the data flows. Now, this data flow, I'm running it every day, as I mentioned, and this is the monitoring part that we have, right? Let's take a look on one of these things in detail and see what it does. So the monitoring will give me all the details of how much work has been done on these processes. So you can see how much utilization, how many activities has been executed, and so forth. And then if I want to see the details, now I can go and monitor every single process that I have. I can check out the details, how much time, how many records, and so forth was executed and processed. So this is basically the analytic execution part from my pipelining. But now that data is curated and is sitting on my storage, so this is my curated data, I'm going to use my Spark tool to be able to execute the data. And then with this, I'm just going to go through this one, so you will see that how these processes are working. Now I'm defining my sessions. I'm going to connect and extract some data from my storage here. I'm going to create a reading a Parquet file. It's one of these files that I had. Okay, I'm going to basically read that file, and then convert them to a data frame, and then displaying the file. So I have the results from different sets. So here you go. So this is the data that I was able to extract from my files. That has been the result of the result of the process. And then from that point, a simple count to show that, okay, I have my data files, I have this many files, and so forth. So this piece is the Spark process. I can do almost the same thing with my data with, coming down here. This is the table. I can create, a SQL experience, or I can create a notebook experience. If I choose to do a SQL experience, this is basically the data that I have. Let's execute this. It creates a table, it extracts the data, and then I'll be able to execute data and extract the data. So every single tool that basically we need, it's part of this Synapse Studio, and then here you go, and this is the result. And you have ability to do every analytic type of work that you require to have within your data lake, your data sets, and so forth. So with that, I will stop. I hope I was able to give you some perspective of what the Azure capabilities regarding the big data and analytics are. Let's use the rest of the time for questions. If anybody has, I'll try to be specific as much as possible. You have my email address. If you feel you need to know more about these things, please feel free to access to email me, follow my Twitter, and so forth. So hopefully this was helpful. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Patrick. And yeah, it seems like it's a very easy to use and functional platform. And we do have a question from Dongxing, and he asked that, do you have experience working with Azure Databricks? If yes, what do you see the relationship of Databricks with other Azure AI and data products?
Yes, definitely I can answer that question. Databricks is a native Azure tool, okay? But the big difference between the Databricks and the Azure Synapse Studio that you see is that Databricks is very much code-based tool, right? It means that you have to open up your notebooks and you have to write your code the way that you want. A lot of data scientists, they like to work with the Databricks because they are more in control on using their code. They can import their libraries, they can do whatever they want with the code. So you can use Databricks exactly in line with whatever you have here. So if you have a notebook that you basically develop and you want to use within the Synapse Studio, you can do that. You can import your notebook, or you can use the Azure Databricks notebooks as a pipeline execution piece, and then you can execute it within the Synapse Studio. So those are not separate tools. I like to say that those are hand in hand, and the tools that they complete each other. So they use different purposes, different type of people, they like to use them, but they complete each other.
Yeah, thank you for the question, for the answering the question. And also I have a question that our platform tends to be closer to our user, it's easy to use, and no ETL, less feature engineering. So like you mentioned that we work with hospital and doctors, nurses who do not have a lot of professional technical skills to deal with the platform. So do you think there's still a gap from the industry to our technical, and how we fill up the gap?
Yeah, I think the gap already still exists, right? So definitely we're not expecting doctors or nurses to be able to get to this level of accessing the data or building visualization. But what the Synapse or Azure is trying to do is to close the gap the way that bringing the data from the core format, from the raw format, all the way to the presentation layers that the doctors or nurses can use to a very short amount of time. With integrating all these tools all together, with integrating the Power BI, integrating the presentation tiers inside the tool, we are trying to shorten that time that the data from the beginning all the way to the presentation layer can be easier for developers to develop and provide them for the end users. So the gap exists, but with these tools, we're trying to minimize the gap as far as the easy way to use the tool, and then the time frame, to shorten the time frame so they can deliver the data in a shorter time frame.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Jason, so first of all, thank you, Patrick, to join us, give us a presentation. Can you, go back to some place, some of our members, they want your contact information. So for future, questions. So if you have anything you can share now, and also, do you have anything to share with our members? Maybe some website to learn Azure, or some you're thinking.
Definitely, yeah. Thank you for reminding me that piece. So if you want to start using Azure, okay, it's extremely easy just to go to azure.com, you can create a subscription for free. Okay, if you create a subscription for free, it will give you $200 for a year. So you can start working with the Azure and everything that you see for free, up to $200 credit. So it's obvious that, if you want to use, if you have multiple emails, you can have, basically unlimited access to the Azure, right? You can just use multiple emails to access, and then that's I think it's intentionally to promote people just to go and start using the Azure. That's the first way, and that's the easiest way, and the basically no cost to anyone. So there is no reason that people say, I cannot, I need to access the Azure and I cannot. You can just go to the azure.com, use your email, you will have $200 credit, you can go ahead and use it. The second way is that, through your companies. A lot of companies these days, if they have access to the Microsoft, they have access to the MSDN subscriptions. MSDN subscription gives you $150 free access to the Azure for every single one who has an MSDN license. So use that, and you can do it, and you can start learning from the Azure. So those are the two ways that I can say it's almost free for anyone who wants to do. A lot of people who they're learning, they can go and then they can learn. There is learning paths in the Azure also. So learning paths, if you just search the learning path for Azure, there are different learning paths and different labs and different trainings free of charge for everyone who is interested. So you can follow up. Let's say you want to become a data engineer, right? So becoming a data engineer, you have to complete multiple type of certifications. As far as understanding different platforms, understanding storage, SQL, Databricks, and so forth. So those trainings will provide you everything that you need. And with those free accounts that I mentioned, you can follow up the labs, and you can complete all the trainings, and you can become Azure certified. I would try to follow up, create a list as a follow-up for Azure certifications, and then provide you with all the information that you want. If you go to my, if you have any more further questions, please email me with the email that you see on the screen, or tweet me. I will be more than happy to provide more detailed information regarding certification paths and trainings.
Okay, so the last question, we are running out of the time. Okay, so what do you think the job opportunities for Azure?
I'm sorry, say again, please.
What do you think the job opportunities for Azure system?
Oh, job opportunities are huge, especially these days in the cloud, right? So think about 25 years ago. 25 years ago, if you know how to write a SQL command with the SQL 6.5, you had the job, okay? And it was pretty good. After that, you'll be able to just go learn different type of relational databases. I'm going back to FoxPro days. I'm going back to Pascal days. So if you know those things, it was you had pretty good opportunity to find a good job. After that, more and more big data, Hadoop clusters, Cloudera clusters, building those things becomes more and more popular for the companies to have everything their on-prem data centers. These days, the trend is that everyone is trying to utilize the power of the cloud, right? Because no company can build a data center the way that Microsoft, Amazon, Google, or Oracle, or anybody else is doing, right? The amount of investment that these big companies are doing is huge. So it makes sense for other companies just to go and use this infrastructure that is already out there, because it's more cost effective. I didn't talk about the CapEx and OpEx, right? So those are the big topics that these days are very important. But for us as developers and people who are trying to use the cloud, it's a huge opportunity, because knowing every single piece of this technology that enables companies to utilize the cloud, they need us. They need people who know these things and they know how to use these things to provide, the technical support for companies to achieve their business goals. So knowing these things are awesome. I mean, I cannot emphasize more. Go and learn. The learning opportunities are huge. These days, everything is almost free on the cloud. Everything is almost free for you to go and learn with the different courses and trainings. So please do that. No limitation.
Okay. Thank you for your comments on my question. That's great.
Sure.
And then again, thank you to your support at Ideas community. And thank you all the attendees.